All right, hey guys. So this video is going to be about formal rationality. Now you will note, I'm sure, that I haven't talked about formal rationality, and this is one of the problems with Weber. Um, he he talks about interactions, and he talks about meaningful action from individual human beings as the only thing that really happens. But then he spent a lot of time talking about big macro level phenomena, like the idea of rationalization as sort of a movement or process that was changing things in particularly the Western world, but really it ends up taking over everywhere. Um, I would like to be able to wed those two things in a seamless way for you, but the reality is I can't. I will briefly try to make a suggestion of how they can be, and it's a suggestion that will make some sense to you. But it's important for you to understand part of Weber is inconsistency in a way that it wasn't true for Marx and it wasn't true for Durkheim. Weber has these ideals, but then he really wants to understand what's going on, and he doesn't necessarily stick to them. Okay, so we're going to talk about formal rationality. Formal rationality doesn't have a great definition, but it has 6 characteristics, which I've listed here. Um, the kind of the quintessential way that sociologists will talk about this later on is actually it's in terms of something called McDonaldization, which you maybe have come across. One of the authors of our textbook, George Ritzer, is the guy who comes up with the idea of McDonaldization. The idea that in the 20th century and into the 21st century, a lot of different both corporations but other organizations kind of modeled themselves on McDonald's. McDonald's is a kind of a quintessential example of formal rationality. Everything about McDonald's, at least at first, I mean, there's a reaction to this, but again, ideal types, right? Don't come after me because McDonald's has got some new, cool, non-efficient thing that it's doing to try to bring people in. Formal rationality is a way of organizing things. It's not a way of a person acting. This is, you can think of it as that means and rationality that motivates a person to act put into a structure that then will impose itself on other people. Weber didn't technically say that. I'm saying that. It makes logical sense, but don't get confused that Weber said, and so this idea of formal rationality comes from means end. He didn't say that. I said that right there. But what you can think of is a person like the McDonald's brothers who decide they are going to create something, and they're doing it in a means end way. They're not doing it based on tradition, and they're not doing it based on emotion, and they're not doing it particularly based on some value that's noble and greater than themselves. They're doing it to get rich. The way they structured their organization was according to formal rationality. All right, so here's the 6 elements of it. Calculability. If you want to make things very, very efficient, you count everything. And that way you know if you're wasting things or not. You also can then study how successful you're being. So if you just kind of gather up all of the money at the end of the month or at the end of every couple of months and you're not really paying close attention to it, you don't know if opening earlier was worth it or opening later is worth it, or if adding more things to the menu is worth it, or if subtracting things from the menu. This idea of calculability is kind of, for us, as a lot of these things are going to be, kind of course, but we're all children of McDonald's in a sense. We all expect that we are going to be counting how much something is worth. Taking, and this is where Weber is going to flip, because It's taking something that should be qualitative, the quality of a meal, and reducing it to quantity, how quickly you can get it, how cheap it is. That idea is calculability. Second thing is efficiency. You can go to a McDonald's and basically get your food if you drive slowly enough through the drive-thru, which don't do it because it'll annoy them. But you could probably get your food without actually ever stopping your car. Don't do it. But you know what I mean? Like, if I want to make a meal, it's going to take a long time. If I want something efficient, go to McDonald's. Yeah, simple as that. It's about speed. And again, Weber is going to talk about this iron cage of rationalization, because what do you sacrifice for that? I mean, very few people beyond the age of 4 look forward to eating at McDonald's. If you do, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but I mean, generally speaking, it's not considered to be the best experience you're going to get. You're going to get something quick. Predictability. One of the virtues that McDonald's has, and this is something that's really depressing to me. When the first graduate school I went to was in Alabama. I'd lived in the Midwest up until then. And I was really excited to go to Alabama. I chose going to grad school there over a school in the Midwest because I was like, I'm going to go experience something new. And of course I did to some degree, but my first introduction to Tuscaloosa, Alabama was all the same fast food crap that we had in Minnesota. It was the exact same thing. And why would that be? Well, it's predictable. People who are not particularly adventurous know exactly what they're going to get. You walk into a McDonald's and you know what you're going to get. It's not going to be great, but it's predictable to you. And there's comfort in that. You're not taking a risk. Weber again would say you're trapped in an iron cage. You take risks, you get the possibility of great experiences. That's not what formal rationality is about. It has trained us to want predictability. Non-human technology. You you don't go to McDonald's to learn how to be a cook, right? You go to McDonald's to push buttons when the machine tells you to push buttons. McDonald's is basically an assembly line, and obviously McDonald's doesn't exist when Weber is writing, but the assembly line does. And the assembly line takes, if you think about human beings over the long span of human history, we go from being artisans and craftsmen to being cogs in a machine, to basically doing the one thing. If you ever worked on an assembly line, it's horrible. I've worked on an assembly line. It's a terrible job because you just do the same thing over and over again. You are a glorified machine. The replacement, and ultimately, and this is part of the reason that manufacturing jobs have gone in America, are going. We still manufacture tons of stuff in America. We just do it with robots and automated machinery. This non-human technology really is about the replacement of human beings with non-human technology. A system of formal rationality tries to minimize human beings as much as possible. Let me scroll down a little bit. I know we're on to control, but I just want to make sure that I am saying the things I need to. So, in order for a formal this type of structure to be as efficient as possible, one of the things you have to be able to do is take out as much uncertainty as possible. And machines can break down, but generally speaking, they function in a very predictable way. The thing that doesn't, the variable that doesn't, is human beings. So formal rational systems attempt to try to reduce as much as possible human improvisation in a situation. So you go to McDonald's, you know exactly where you're supposed to walk. You have a very limited menu. You're not expected, and now don't come after me because this is ideal types. You're not expected to ask for this or that different menu item or modify it in a certain way. in an ideal type sort of way, you are supposed to take what you are given. You are then supposed to sit in a prescribed place, and you are supposed to throw your trash away and leave your tray. And if you think about the experience of being in there, and we're used to it, and I'm not saying like, oh, it would be better if people just did whatever they wanted in McDonald's. I don't know, it might be, but I could see an argument that it wouldn't. You're sitting in when we go into a McDonald's, think about all of the million things that you are capable of doing as a human being. Everything from running and jumping to singing to doing art to whatever. And you do almost none of them, right? You act according to the script that McDonald's provides you. So, and the whole reason for that is to get you in and get you out as efficiently as possible. And finally, last, and because Weber's not dumb, he's a genius. He said one of the things about this system is it's built by humans, but this is not a system that really works for human beings. What this does is creates irrational consequences for people. People end up without, and the particular one for him, and this is a term that he uses, is the world becomes less enchanted. He talked about the disenchantment of life, which for a guy who's, I mean, I guess maybe it does make sense, because he's all about, there isn't a society, there's just humans acting. And he cared about people. He's hopeless. He doesn't think it's going to work out because we're going to get addicted to efficiency. We're going to trade in the possibility of enchantment or meaningful experiences. But he said this is the big irrationality. We're creating this to make our lives better, but it doesn't. It makes our lives worse. But the thing is, we choose it over and over, right? Like, I could sit down with, or stand up with my wife and my 2 kids, and we could make a meal together from scratch. We absolutely are physically capable of doing that. We could make something wonderful, and the experience would be great. We don't do that because it's not efficient. It's easier to get something that we can pop into the oven really quickly, sometimes even pop in the microwave, sometimes just drive through a restaurant. Is that as enriching of an experience for us? No, but we do it all the time. And this is, again, that iron cage of rationalization. It's a trap. We are trapped in thinking that we need to be more efficient. The more efficient we are, the more things we pack into our lives, the more we have to be efficient, and we're trapped in it. And Weber would say we're trapped in a life that is not as meaningful as it could be. God, that's depressing. His great fear with all of this. Hold on, let me make sure I have scrolled to the right place. I'm sorry these videos are a little bit long. I'm apparently passionate about Weber. What he would say is, this is his big concern. His concern is, it's not up here anymore. Remember that value rationality we talked about last time? Okay, so he changes it. When he's talking about it, he sometimes talks about it as substantive rationality, but he defines it as rationality embodied by Western civilization's highest ideals, the autonomous and free individual whose actions were given continuity by their reference to ultimate values. So he's talking about value rationality, right? I told you he's not consistent. His big concern is that is fading, that it's being replaced by formal rationality. And ultimately, as we kind of have seen here, formal rationality becomes a system in which we, even though human beings have created it, are dominated by it, dominated by a thing that we have created. That idea of domination, I'm going to talk about that in the next video. We're at 15 minutes, so I got to go. But we'll talk about domination in a particular form of formal rationality called bureaucracy next time.